They all smiled at me, but not one of them ever really saw me. The reception desk of Hagen and Weiss Immobilien, a luxury real estate firm tucked inside a glass tower in Vienna's business district. I was the first face everyone passed, and the last one they remembered. My name is Sofia Luka. I was 29 when they destroyed me. I wasn't born in Austria. I came from a village near Split, Croatia, raised by a grandmother who scrubbed floors in a hospital and believed coffee grounds could tell the future. I moved to Vienna with perfect teeth and broken German, hoping to build something brighter. Then where I came from, what I got, was a smile I practiced in the mirror every morning. Polite, warm, non-threatening. The kind of smile that said, yes, I'll buzz them up. Yes, I'll stay late and take the package. Yes, I'll pretend I didn't hear what you said about the cleaners. But a smile means nothing when they've already decided what you are. To Nadine, the senior marketing executive with the diamond engagement ring, I was the Eastern girl with nice skin. To Carla, the finance assistant who wore beige everything, I was probably here because of some visa. To Mr. Weiss, the co-founder, I was sweet Sophia, who didn't need a raise because I had no real responsibilities. They didn't know I was fluent in 3 languages. They didn't know I took night classes in data analytics. They didn't know I remembered every name, every snub, every cruel smile passed like wine across their meetings. They thought I was invisible, but I was only watching. The day it happened started like any other. I arrived at 7:52 a.m., coat still damp from the drizzle, hair in a bun. The glass in the lobby sparkled. The air smelled like lavender cleaner and fresh carpet. At T9:06, Nadine walked past me in heels that cost more than my month's salary. She didn't say good morning. At T9:10, Mr. Weiss came in, nodded once, and handed me a croissant he didn't want. At T11:24, the elevator dinged and my world began to fall apart. It was Franz, the compliance officer, pale and flustered. He walked straight to me with a folder in hand. We need to speak privately. I blinked. Of course. Now? He nodded. In the small conference room on the 2nd floor, I sat across from him as he pulled out sheets of printed emails, screenshots, reports. Words like confidential leak, internal server, password linked to Sophia L blurred in my vision. I started. Franz held up a hand. Please, legal is involved now. This is serious. Until we resolve it, you're suspended with immediate effect. My mouth opened, closed. My throat tightened. You think I leaked internal listings to competitors? I whispered. I'm a receptionist. His voice softened. That's exactly why it's suspicious. You had access, and no one would notice you. Those words lodged in my ribs. No one would notice me. No one, not even to believe me when I said I was innocent. I was escorted out by a guard. No time to collect my things. No goodbye. 3 weeks later, I was jobless. 5 weeks later, my boyfriend, a real estate agent who worked in the same building, broke up with me via voice note. I just can't deal with the drama right now. You understand, right? 7 weeks later, I moved into a shared flat with a Moldovan nurse and a Syrian Uber driver. I work nights at a Turkish bakery. Days I spend in the library. I didn't cry. I learned. I read about business structures, back-end systems, APIs, data protection laws. I studied tech companies and how they bought properties to expand. I made spreadsheets, maps, lists. I stopped smiling, and I remembered every name, every floor, every person who laughed when I fell, because I was planning something big. And 3 years later, on a crisp spring morning, I stood inside a boardroom overlooking the same lobby where I used to sit, and I told the agent across from me, yes, we'll proceed with the acquisition, full purchase. No need to keep existing tenants. He didn't know me, but I knew every corner of this building, because I used to sit at the reception, and now, I own the whole damn floor. Power doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it returns in silence, wearing heels you can't hear, stepping into rooms where it once wasn't welcome. I arrived at Barkenstre 27 at precisely 8:57 a.m., the same building, same glass doors, same cold gray lobby. I once watched from behind a polished desk, but now I wasn't behind the desk. I was walking across the marble leather, heels tapping softly, black coat fitted, hair loose and calm. There was no badge on my lapel, just a quiet certainty in my stride. The receptionist, a young blonde I'd never seen before, looked up with polite indifference. I nodded at her. She smiled the way I used to, just enough to survive. Top floor, I said. She nodded. Buzzed the elevator? She didn't ask who I was. Perfect. I stepped in alone. Just like old times, but this time, I wasn't going up to deliver coffee or return a lost scarf. I was going up to finalize a takeover. The deal had been years in the making. Through a shell holding group in Prague, we had acquired 68% of the parent real estate portfolio that included this building. We didn't announce it. We didn't need to. The tenants would find out today when the new ownership was formally registered and their comfort zone became mine. T floor 9. The elevator paused. The doors opened. Nadine, her hair was as perfect as ever, highlighted waves tucked behind designer sunglasses. She didn't even look up as she stepped in, too busy tapping on her phone. The scent of jasmine perfume followed her like a cloud of entitlement. I didn't say a word. She stood next to me, unaware, inches away from the woman she once called reception wallpaper. My heart thudded, not from fear but from control, because I could say something. I could reveal it all right there. But I didn't. The elevator dinged again. Floor 12, executive suites. She stepped out, then paused, turned halfway toward me, something flickering behind her lashes. Recognition? A trick of light? Or that strange instinct women sometimes have when the air shifts? But she said nothing, and walked away. I smiled. Not the old receptionist smile. The new one. The one that knew exactly how this ends. By 10:30 am. Chaos had begun. My assistant, Mark, messaged. They've received the email. Mr. Weiss just called the holding firm line. He's furious. I replied. Let him wait. Let them all wait. I'll walk in at 11, because you don't run to your enemies when you win. You let them stew. At 10:55. I returned to the elevator. But I didn't go alone. I brought Mark, 2 members from our legal team, and a portfolio folder containing every transaction, contract, and clause they'd failed to read carefully over the past 6 months. At 11 o'clock sharp, the elevator doors opened onto the 12th floor once again. This time, they all turned. Nadine, Carla, Mr. Weiss. Their conversation froze. Their eyes widened. They recognized me now. Sofia, Weiss said, as if my name tasted strange in his mouth. What are you? I stepped forward, handed him the folder. Your new lease terms, and notice of transition of ownership. Nadine's mouth parted. Carla blinked twice. I don't understand. Who do you work for now? I looked her dead in the eye. I don't work for anyone. Then I turned to Weiss. You fired me in a conference room. No apology, no proof, just convenience. He flinched. I smiled again, soft, razor-edged. Now I'm returning the favor. Professionally, of course. Silence. Even the printer in the corner had stopped humming. Mark broke it with perfect timing. Should we proceed with reclaiming the executive floor, Miss Luka? Miss Luka, they heard it, they felt it, and no one, not even Weiss, said a word, because they knew. This wasn't a twist of fate. This was a woman who waited, watched, and came back exactly when it hurt the most. It wasn't their silence that satisfied me. It was my own steady calm, and finally full of meaning. That afternoon, after the contracts were signed, the stunned faces left behind, and the legal team returned to the office, I walked alone, down the same street I used to rush through. In winter, boots soaked, holding a paper cup of vending machine coffee, afraid of being 5 minutes late. Now I walked slowly. No one could fire me now, but even freedom carries weight. I stopped in front of a shop window, an old glass storefront, with dust on the edges and fading mannequins in spring dresses. It wasn't the fashion that made me pause. It was the mirror. It caught my reflection at an angle. My coat, my hair, my sharp jawline, everything looked sharper now, firmer. But the eyes were quieter, not cold, just older. I tilted my head and whispered under my breath, "Are you proud of me yet?" I wasn't sure who I was asking. Maybe the girl who once sat at the reception desk, typing in appointments and silently mouthing vocabulary for her evening German classes. Maybe the woman who cried in the staff bathroom when her boyfriend ghosted her after the scandal. Maybe my grandmother, who died before I ever made it to Vienna, who scrubbed the same floors in a different country and always said, dignity is not what you're given, it's what you refuse to lose. Or maybe I was speaking to myself, the version of me who still wondered if this was enough. Back at the new office, Mark was waiting with 2 espressos and a stack of emails. He had that boyish enthusiasm of someone who believed in structure more than emotion. I drafted a press statement, he said. We can release it under the holding company's name or no. I interrupted gently. No statement. Not yet. His brow furrowed. You don't want to own the win? I sipped the espresso. It was strong, bitter, exactly what I liked. I don't need headlines. Not today. He nodded slowly, sensing the edge in my voice. I turned to the window. The city stretched below like a grid of unfinished decisions. You know what I do want? I said, more to myself. What? A clean bathroom. And peace. He laughed softly. We can arrange that. That evening, I stayed late, after the others left, after the lights dimmed, after the hum of Vienna quieted under a curtain of dusk. I unlocked the file drawer in my office, the one I kept for myself. Inside were three things: the original termination letter unsigned, never explained, a photo of me at the old front desk, wearing the pale blue blouse I could never quite wash the coffee stain out of, a printed page of the company's intranet, with the line from the old job manual that used to make me burn inside: receptionists are the face of the firm, not the voice. I smiled, not bitterly, just knowingly. Because now, I had both, the face and the voice, and they could no longer look away. Some people apologize to ease their own guilt. Others do it when they realize the person they once looked down on is now sitting in the chair they wanted. It came as a message request on LinkedIn. Carla Summer. I stared at the name for a long time, as if it were a ghost appearing in the daylight. Her profile was still the same beige tone as her wardrobe muted photo. No smile. A list of credentials and titles that looked impressive until you realized they hadn't changed in 5 years. I hadn't heard a word from her since the day she walked past me in the lobby, coffee in hand, after I was escorted out like a criminal. The message was short. Hi Sophia. I hope you're doing well. I'd like to meet for coffee sometime soon if you're open to it. There's something I've wanted to say for a long time. Carla, something she's wanted to say? I could guess. I'm sorry. I didn't know. It wasn't personal, or the classic. We were all under pressure. But curiosity dangerous. Sharp curiosity made me reply. Tomorrow, 4 p.m., Caf Ebner, District 7. My time is limited. She responded instantly. Thank you. The caf was nearly empty when I arrived. Late afternoon sun pooled across the tables, making everything look softer than it deserved. Carla was already there, same posture, straight-backed, tense, but thinner, more tired. Her makeup was minimal, and she clutched her coffee cup like it was the only thing grounding her. I took the seat across without a smile. She tried one. Weak. It died quickly. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. Then why ask? She exhaled. Because I haven't slept properly since I saw your name on the ownership documents. I stirred my espresso slowly. So this isn't about the past. It's about your position. No, she said quickly. Yes. I don't know. Both? Her hands trembled slightly. You were right. You were always smarter than they saw. Then I saw. And what they did to you. What I didn't stop. It was cruel. Silence. The apology hovered between us, fragile and unfinished. You knew it wasn't me, I said softly. Didn't you? Carla nodded, guilt pouring into every crease of her face. But you didn't speak up. No one would have listened. To me either. I raised an eyebrow. You were in finance. You had more power than you think. I was scared, she whispered. And weak. Now that felt honest. She looked at me again. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I just wanted to say it out loud. For a moment, I considered the years, the toilets I cried in, the jobs I took, the hunger, the silence, all because people like her, not just the ones who hurt me, but the ones who watched and said nothing, chose comfort over conscience. I set down my cup. Carla, I believe you're sorry. I do. She looked surprised, relieved. But here's the thing, I continued. Apologies are nice, but they don't change who walked out that door alone. She swallowed hard. I don't need your guilt, I said gently. Keep it. Maybe it'll help you become better, braver, the next time someone else is being crushed in the margins. She nodded slowly. I don't hate you, I added, but I'm not here to make you feel lighter either. She said nothing, just looked down, ashamed, and that felt like justice enough. Later that night, as I walked home under Vienna's golden dusk, I passed the reflection of myself in a bakery window. This time, I didn't stop. I didn't need to. I knew who I was now, and I knew something Carla still didn't. Closure isn't something people give you. It's something you earn when you choose not to let the past speak louder than your future. We were always the last to leave, the invisible ones, cleaning up the messes no one else wanted to admit they made. But even quiet girls remember everything. I hadn't spoken to Melina in almost 4 years. She used to work night shifts cleaning the lower offices of Hagen and Weiss, pushing a trolley that squeaked on the tiles and never once interrupted anyone's phone call. She had 4 kids, a smoker's laugh, and a back that ached so bad she had to sit between floors. Back then, I was the receptionist, she was the cleaner, and somehow, we were both beneath notice. She had once slipped me a painkiller when she saw me crying behind the front desk. She didn't ask why, she just said, "They're not worth your tears, Sofia." Now, I was standing in front of her apartment building, a cracked fod in Ottakring with satellite dishes blooming from the balconies like rusted flowers. She opened the door slowly, unsure. She didn't recognize me at first, but then her eyes widened. "Sofia," I smiled. "Come," she said quickly. "I still make that terrible coffee you used to pretend to like." Her living room smelled like boiled sugar and clean sheets. Her youngest daughter peeked out from behind a curtain, shy and curious. "You look rich," Melina teased as she poured thick black coffee into mismatched cups. I laughed. "That's because I am, at least on paper." She sat down across from me, eyes sharper than I remembered. "So why are you here?" I pulled a folder from my bag. "I want to start something. A new office services company. Fair pay, union-friendly, multilingual contracts, real protection." She raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of money and lawyers." "I have both." She sipped her coffee slowly. And I want you," I said, "to help me build the cleaning team." Her hand froze midair. "You want me back, cleaning?" "No," I said. "I want you managing, hiring, setting rules that protect the women who never got a chance to say no." She stared at me, blinking. "This isn't charity, Melina. You've worked 20 years in this city's shadows. You know more about what women like us need than any HR manual ever will." She sat very still, then looked away. After a moment, she whispered, "No one's ever asked me to lead anything before." I leaned forward. "Then let me be the first." Over the next month, the Luka Collective was born, a new kind of facilities management company. Built by immigrants, run by women, with contracts in 5 languages and no tolerance for exploitation. I called it the Collective because that's what it had to be, not one woman rising alone, but many. Together. By the end of the first quarter, we had 30 clients, including 3 buildings that had once refused to hire anyone without Austrian names. By the end of the second, we had a waiting list, and every time I walked through our modest little office in District 5, past desks with chipped wood and flower pots filled with basil and mint, I thought of Melina's daughter peeking through the curtain, and I smiled, because the future doesn't just happen. You build it, brick by brick, name by name, hand by hand. One afternoon, after a long meeting with a new corporate client, I passed through the lobby of their building and saw something that stopped me. A young woman, maybe 22, in a pale blue receptionist blouse just like I used to wear. She was smiling at a man who didn't say thank you. I watched her, how she held her breath between words, how she lowered her voice to not sound too loud, how she smoothed her skirt every 5 minutes out of instinct, and I walked up to her. "Hi," I said. She looked startled. "Yes. You're doing great," I said. She blinked. "Sorry? I just wanted to say you're doing great. I used to do your job, and I wish someone had told me that back then." She smiled, nervously. "Then really, thanks," she said, almost whispering. I nodded and walked out, not because I needed to, but because sometimes, the greatest revenge is lifting someone else before the world gets to crush them. Some men only learn to look you in the eye once they've fallen below you. But by then, your gaze has already moved on. The email came in late on a rainy Wednesday. Subject: request for introduction, Marcus Lawrence. The name hit like a thud. Marcus Lawrence, former head of operations at Hagen and Weiss. The man who approved the cost cutting that skimmed hours off the cleaner's wages. The man who once told me, pretty girls don't belong in meetings. They belong at the desk, smiling. Apparently, Marcus had just been let go from a construction startup after a failed acquisition. He was now looking to pivot into socially responsible facility consulting. He wanted to collaborate with forward-thinking collectives. He wanted to meet me. I read the email twice, then once again, slowly, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to feel every single beat of irony pulsing through it. He didn't recognize the name, the Luka Collective. He didn't realize it was mine. He had no idea the woman reading his message was the same girl whose badge he once confiscated in front of the entire staff. I agreed to meet him, not out of vengeance, but out of curiosity. At exactly 9 o'clock a.m. on Friday, I arrived at the rooftop cafe of a co-working space in Neubau. Bright morning sun pooled over exposed brick walls and recycled wood tables. It looked young, liberal, like the kind of place people came to rebrand their past mistakes. Marcus was already there, grayer, heavier, but still in a tailored blazer, still holding himself like someone used to being listened to. When he saw me, his mouth froze mid-smile. "Sofia?" "Yes," I said, calm, composed, and far more powerful than the last time we met. He stood awkwardly, extended a hand. I didn't take it. He cleared his throat and gestured to the chair across. "You look, well." I sat. "I am." He fumbled with his menu. "I was surprised to see your name." "Pleasantly, of course. I hadn't realized you were behind Luka Collective." "I know," I said. He smiled nervously. "Small world. Smaller than you thought," I replied. A pause. Then he leaned forward, trying for charm. "I admire what you've built. Truly. I've been thinking a lot about legacy, about how we can shift industries to be more equitable." I waited. He launched into his rehearsed pitch buzzwords, surface-level empathy, half-digested philosophy about social reform and leadership pipelines, but I didn't hear most of it, because I was busy watching his eyes, looking for signs, not of regret, but of understanding, and they weren't there. Marcus didn't come here to apologize. He came here to survive. When he finished, I folded my hands. "You know," I said, "you once told me I smiled too much for someone who didn't understand business." His face flushed. "Sofia, I save it." I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. "You built your career assuming women like me would always stay at the desk, always nod, always disappear. And now," I added, "you're asking me to give you a seat at my table." He looked down. "I don't need your consultancy," I said. "I don't need your experience. What I need is for men like you to stop pretending they discovered compassion just because it finally pays better than cruelty." He opened his mouth, closed it. There was nothing left to say. I stood up. "This meeting is over." And just before I turned away, I added softly, but not kindly, "Next time you walk into a lobby, remember, the girl behind the desk might own the whole building." That evening, I wrote in my notebook, the same one I'd carried since I lost everything. "You don't owe kindness to the hands that once pushed you down. But sometimes denying them your platform is the most graceful kind of justice." And I slept soundly that night, because justice doesn't always look like a courtroom. Sometimes, it's just walking away with your head high, and your name intact. I used to dream of a room where no one raised their voice, where every woman spoke and wasn't interrupted, where no one had to explain their accent or apologize for existing. I never found that room. So I built it. We rented the back hall of a community center tucked between a Halo butcher and a Romanian bakery in District 16. It was far from perfect. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the heating system groaned like an old man in pain. But to me, it was sacred ground. We called it the quiet room not because it was silent, but because so many of us had been quiet for far too long. That morning, I stood at the front, behind a whiteboard with a marker in one hand and a pounding heart in my chest. 17 women filled the chairs before me. They came from Poland, Syria, Bosnia, Ukraine, Nigeria, and southern Italy. Some wore headscarves. Some wore scrubs from morning shifts. Some had babies strapped to their chests. Some carried the kind of stillness in their eyes you only get from being ignored too many times, and all of them looked at me with something between hope and doubt, like they wanted to believe this was different, but weren't sure yet. I introduced myself in German, then again in English, then again in Croatian. Each time, a few faces softened. Then I said what mattered most. I used to sit at the front desk of a building I now own. They erased me. They thought I would never speak, but I did. And now, I'm here to make sure you can too. The room didn't erupt in applause. Instead, a silence heavier than clapping settled, in the kind that means something real just happened. And then, Adama, a mother of 3 from Nigeria, raised her hand. Her German was halting, but brave. "I am tired of cleaning places I am never invited to sit in." I nodded. "Then let's start building the place where you belong." The workshop began, not with business strategy or CV polishing, but with one simple exercise. Name one moment you stayed silent, but still remember. One by one, the hands went up. When my manager asked if I understood contracts, then laughed. When I worked 14 hours and only got paid for 8, and I said nothing. When I found someone's child crying in a locked room during a private party and didn't dare speak up because I thought I'd be fired. When I saw a cleaner get pushed and called a ghost, and I did nothing because I thought, maybe I was one too. By the end, there were tears, but also something else, resolve. I handed out notebooks, cheap, spiral-bound, plain. I told them, this isn't for your shopping list. This is for your voice. Write every time someone makes you feel small. Then we'll learn how to turn it into something bigger. Adama smiled. Even if my writing is bad, especially then, I said, that's when they don't expect you to speak. And that's exactly when you must. The next day, I found a note tucked under the community center door. It read, I watched from outside. I couldn't come in. Not yet. But thank you for making the door look open. I folded the note and slid it into my coat pocket. It stayed with me all week because I knew what it meant. Sometimes being seen is the first step to surviving. And sometimes the most radical act is leaving the light on for someone else. That night, as I locked the quiet room and turned off the lights, I whispered to the empty chairs, we are not ghosts. We are the ones who know where the real work happens in silence, in sweat, and now, in solidarity. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was healing alone. I was healing with them. It's easy to talk about empowerment when everyone in the room already agrees. It's much harder when your truth makes them uncomfortable, especially when they're the ones who invited you to speak. The invitation came in a cream-colored envelope, tucked inside a sleek black folder. I found it on my desk one morning, hand-delivered, sealed with gold. International Women in Labor Leadership Summit Vienna 2025 panel topic, From Margins to Management. Keynote guest, Sofia Luka, founder of the Luka Collective. Reread it twice, not because I didn't believe it, but because somewhere inside me, a girl with coffee-stained sleeves still thought, they must have sent it to the wrong person, but they hadn't. I was finally being invited into the very rooms I used to clean. The day of the summit, the grand hall of the Sofinsel was packed with hundreds of polished professionals. Blazers, brooches, high heels on marble. The air smelled like expensive perfume and justified legacy. My name was printed on the schedule between a Swiss tech CEO and a Swedish minister for equality. A part of me wanted to laugh. Another part of me wanted to run. But the rest of me stood taller. Because I wasn't there to impress. I was there to remind them who they've forgotten. Backstage, a young coordinator approached me with a clipboard and a nervous smile. Miss Luka, your speech was reviewed by the executive committee this morning. Just a few minor edits they'd like you to consider. She handed me a marked-up printout, lines crossed out in red. When you're paid less because your name doesn't sound local, too politically sensitive when your boss threatens your visa after you speak up, not appropriate for this audience when cleaners are asked to use back entrances to avoid being seen by clients. Tone Downey stared at the paper, then looked at her. I'm not changing anything, I said calmly. She hesitated. They just want to keep the message empowering. It is empowering, I replied. You just don't like where it points the blame. On stage, the lights were warm. The audience leaned in, ready for something safe. Instead, I gave them the truth. I wasn't born into influence. I didn't have mentors or capital or invitations. I had bleach on my hands, pain in my spine, and silence in my throat. But I also had eyes, and I saw everything. I saw how some women climb ladders while others are told to hold them steady. I saw how migrant workers are praised in speeches, but not in payroll. I saw how people talk about diversity only when it's photogenic. I built the Luka Collective so no woman ever again has to smile while being stepped on. If that makes you uncomfortable, good. Change starts in discomfort. And power begins when someone like me, once invisible, decides to stop asking for permission. The room was silent. Some faces stiff, some eyes wide, a few clapped, then more, and then like rain breaking through clouds, thunderous applause. But backstage, the coordinator avoided my eyes. I smiled, because I hadn't come for approval. I'd come to make sure the next girl with an immigrant name and a strong voice knew the microphone wasn't off limits anymore. That night, I walked through Vienna alone. No cameras, no headlines, just street lamps, wind, and the echo of my own footsteps, and I whispered to the quiet city, this is what power sounds like. Not polished, not easy, but finally, ours. Sometimes the ghosts we leave behind don't stay dead. Sometimes they Send you messages at 1:17 a.m. and they wear your old uniform. The message came through our collective's anonymous helpline. At first, I didn't notice anything special. We get dozens every week, women looking for advice, shelter, legal aid. But this one made my blood run cold. Hi, I work at the reception desk at Hagen and Weiss. I found your name online. Something's wrong. They're pressuring me to lie about internal reports. I think they're hiding something bigger. I don't know who to trust. Can you help me? No name, no contact. Just that blue email signature I knew too well. Receptionist, Hagen and Weiss, my old place, the beginning of everything. I sat at my kitchen table for hours, rereading the message under the yellow glow of the stove light. It was late, too late for logic, too early for denial. I had cut ties with that place emotionally, professionally, spiritually. I'd moved on, but she hadn't. Whoever she was still stuck in the shadows of that glass tower, just like I once was, silenced, cornered, scared. The temptation to ignore it was strong. I wasn't a savior. I didn't owe that company or anyone in it another second of my breath. But then I remembered what I used to pray for late at night, crying into my second-hand pillow. Please, let someone see me. Just one person. What if I was that person for her? I send a reply through our encrypted server. I know what it's like to sit at that desk. I believe you. Meet me tomorrow. CAF Silbergas. PM back table. Wear something blue. No guarantee she'd come, but I'd be there. The next evening, I sat in the CAF, a quiet spot with frosted windows and chipped teacups. I chose the corner booth, ordered chamomile tea I wouldn't drink. At T604, she walked in, nervous, wide-eyed, clutching her bag like a lifeline. She wore a light blue blouse. I stood to greet her. She stared at me. You're her, she said. The Sofia Luka. I nodded. Just Sofia is fine. She sat, hands trembling, voice small. Her name was Elena, 22, moved from Romania last year, hired at the same desk I once sat at. She pulled out a crumpled notebook, pages filled with dates, names, files, copies of internal memos. Her handwriting shaking but determined. They're laundering internal contracts through a fake maintenance firm, she whispered. I found invoices that don't match real work. I asked questions. Now they're freezing me out. I scanned. The papers. It was real and dangerous. They said if I talk, she added, voice cracking, they'll cancel my probation, report me, say I falsified my CV, I'll lose my visa. Her eyes welled up. I don't know what to do. I remembered your name. I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't me, but she could have been, and if I walked away now, I'd become just another woman who made it, and shut the door behind her. I reached across the table, my voice steady. You're not alone, Elena. Not anymore. She started crying, quietly. Relief mixed with exhaustion. We'll protect you, I continued. Legally, publicly if needed, but you decide the pace. We don't move unless you're ready. She nodded. I passed her a card. Keep this. Burn it after. It's encrypted. We'll meet again, in a safer place. As she left, I watched her shoulders straighten only slightly, but enough, and I realized something. Revenge is sweet, but rescue is sacred, because sometimes, power isn't punishing those who hurt you, it's saving the ones still being hurt. They built their empire on silence. But silence doesn't last forever, especially not when it learns how to speak, clearly and without fear. The first public document dropped on a Tuesday, a full report 27 pages, meticulously laid out connecting Hagen and Weiss to a fake shell company, funneling cleaning contracts, inflating invoices, and pressuring junior staff to stay quiet. Attached were screenshots, payment records, and witness testimonies. One of those testimonies was signed, Elena C. Reception Department. The media pounced. By Thursday morning, Der Standard and Courier ran the story above the fold. By noon, the firm's name was trending on Twitter across 3 countries. By 3 p.m., Marcus Lorentz had deactivated his LinkedIn account, and by Friday, the entire executive board of Hagen and Weiss had been placed under formal investigation by the Austrian Labor Ministry. I watched it unfold from the safety of our office, eyes fixed on the screen, but mind on something else. Elena, she was in the next room, speaking to a young woman from Albania, comforting her like she'd been doing it her whole life. She wasn't scared anymore. She was becoming something else. Later that week, the press requested interviews. I declined most, but I agreed to one. A quiet sit down with a freelance journalist who once covered my eviction story years ago. He remembered me. You've come far, he said. Is this revenge? I thought for a moment. No, I said. This is repair. He looked puzzled. You see, I added, revenge ends with one person standing. Repair makes room for everyone who never got a chance. He nodded, slowly, and turned off the recorder. Do you think they'll ever say sorry? I smiled. They already have. How? They lost everything. That was their apology. Weeks later, I walked past Bar Kenstray 27-1 last time. The glass doors had new signage. The receptionist desk was gone, replaced by a digital kiosk, and plants no one would water. It felt empty, not in a sad way, in a cleansed way. Like something had burned there, and the air still remembered. I paused at the curb, closed my eyes, and whispered, goodbye, not bitter, not triumphant, just free. That evening, our collective held a small dinner. Just our women, our stories, our laughter, no cameras, no headlines. I stood to speak near the end. I started this journey alone, I said, but I will never walk alone again, because I don't build ladders anymore. I held up my glass. I build rooms. And in this room, we all get a seat. They raised their glasses. They smiled. Some cried. And I knew, with quiet certainty, that this was the real ending. Not the fall of a company. Not a girl who got her power back, but a room full of women who would never again be invisible.